send through any questions that you may have. Lots of people are getting more and more used to this sort of format of presenting. I think the question side of things is always fantastic, something that you maybe think of during the hour. Just pop it through and I'll try and manage that and interrupt our guests during the hour and get the information out of them. Let us know what you're drinking. That's always interesting. It brings up discussions on vintages and certain parcels of land, in this case Burgundy. So yeah, please. And then obviously lastly, that it is recorded. So it is something that we can send out at the end if you can only stay for half the time or would like to send it to a friend. Yeah, so welcome to our two guests. We have good friends of ours, Gordy Newton Johnson, and I know Nadia is somewhere either on the same screen as him or another one. And then Mathilde Grivot from Domaine Grivot in Vosne Romane in Burgundy. So I think this is our sixth Tastinar, if I've counted correctly. And the second one that we're doing on Burgundy, which is obviously very, very close to our hearts. The format's very simple. We're going to try and keep it to an hour because we understand people have got things to do at certain times of the evening. And yeah, so I'll hand over very shortly to Mathilde, and then we'll follow that up with Gordy. So Domaine Grivot, as I say, one of the domains that we right in the beginning for Great Domains started to import, one of the first 6 producers, I think. And crazily enough, when finally our shippers managed to deliver our 2017 Burgundies to us here in Johannesburg, that will be the 19th vintage of Domaine Grivot that we've imported. So it's crazy how time flies. Obviously a huge privilege to get these wines in every year. And there's a great story behind them, which I'm not here to tell you about. And I'm sure Mathilde is on the screen there. And Mathilde is part of the exciting new generation in Burgundy, taking over from their parents to carry on holding the flame of the family and their domain and their holdings. And she's doing it with lots of energy and enthusiasm and amazing results. And we're looking forward to getting the 17s, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the sort of the main vintage that she's sort of started with and being involved with properly from her father. And we look forward to hearing the stories. And the idea is obviously to keep it as interactive as possible through myself, and then obviously through some inputs on the chat. So hope you enjoy it. And I'm going to hand over to Mathilde. Are you there?
Yes. Hello.
Yeah, nice to have you with us. And I think when we last saw you in Burgundy, we were talking about getting you to come visit us physically and do the tastings here in South Africa. So this is going to be the best that we can do for the time being, but hopefully we can get you here when we're all allowed to travel again. But we really appreciate your time, and it's good to see you. And yeah, please take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much, Derek. That's true. That's thanks to the new technology. I am here, but from Vosne Romane. So it's almost the same, but you know, I'm very looking forward to be in South Africa one day, and I'm very happy to be with you, Gordon, also, and thank you very much for all the team in South Africa. I'm very happy to speak with you this evening.
And you said it's quite hot there today.
Yes, absolutely. The weather, so I'm in Vosne Romane actually at the Domaine, and the weather is absolutely wonderful. Very hot temperature outside. The vines are beautiful, very nice grapes. So finger crossed until the harvest. And it could be an early vintage in Burgundy.
We look forward to seeing what happens.
Yes.
But I think, yeah, as we spoke, it'll be great just to get a brief overview about where you are, and obviously we've got a few slides to help us along, just for those. There's some very familiar and some not so familiar with your wines and the Liudis, and to give us a nice overview of what Grivot is about, and I'm sure I'll interrupt you along the way. So looking forward to it.
Okay, sure, with pleasure. So maybe just to start, just to explain shortly. The Burgundy region, so it's located in East France. So you have in the north, more in the north, the Chablis area, were located where they produce only white wine from Chardonnay. And Domaine Grivot is located in the Côte d'Or, with 56 kilometers from Dijon in the north and Santenay in south. And Côte d'Or is divided in two parts. So in the north is Côte de Nuits, in the pink color, and in more darker color is Côte de Beaune, so located in south. So Vosne Romane is located in Côte de Nuits, between Nuits Saint-Georges and Chambolle-Musigny and Vougeot also. And in Vosne Romane area, we only produce red wines from Pinot Noir. It's a clay limestone soil, and the exposition of each vineyard is very important, because in Burgundy you have 4 different appellations. So you have regional appellations, then you have communal appellations, and then Premier Cru, and the best is Grand Cru. So what is a little bit complicated in Burgundy is one appellation could be produced by several winemakers. And for example, we produce the Grand Cru Clos de Vougeot, and Clos de Vougeot is 50 hectares, and there are 82 different producers. So in Burgundy, what is very important is the name of the domain or the name of the producers, and this is the key to choose the bottle or maybe understand a style of wine. But we are here together to understand more about Burgundy, I think. So maybe a small part of history of the domain. So this is my parents, my brother, and how dogs, and the dog's called Enough, like enough is enough. So it's quite funny. And we have now a second one called Makeup. So we love English words. So the Grivot family is a very old family in wine business in Burgundy. At the beginning, my back-grandfather was Gaston Grivot, and he had vineyards close to a small village at 10 kilometers from Vosne Romane. And in 1919, he had the opportunity to buy a big plot of Clos de Vougeot of 1.86 hectares, and so it was in 1919. And because it was easier for him, he decided to sell the other small vineyards to buy just this one closer to Vosne Romane. And it was a great idea because in 1919, Clos de Vougeot was exactly the same level of appellation than others, but now with classification is a Grand Cru, so it's one of the best wine in Burgundy. And so this is Vosne Romane, and generation after generation, the domain continued to increase the size of vineyards. And the last one we could buy was in 1984 with my grandfather Jean and my father Etienne, and it was the fabulous terroir of Richebourg. So now Domaine Grivot is 15 hectares with 18 different Pinot Noir appellations located in Vosne Romane, Nuits Saint-Georges. So this one is a vineyard in Nuits Saint-Georges area. So this is Nuits Saint-Georges les Charmois, very, very nice place. We have a vineyard in Chambolle-Musigny and the Clos de Vougeot. So with my brother Hubert, we are the 6th generation to take over the family estate, and 2010 was our first vintage. And it's very interesting because over the years, Hubert and I took more responsibilities, and my parents does less and less. So we are very lucky because we have exactly the same Pinot Noir vision. We want to go on the same way. So it's very interesting, and it's a great adventure. So as you can see in the vineyard, we have an organic vision. We make every decision according to what the plant needs and what the weather gives us. So we always adapt the work in the vineyard. And we use horses more and more in difficult vineyards where we can go with tractor, or in very specific vineyards like Richebourg and Echezeaux, we are our 2 others Grand Cru. So this is a big plot of Clos de Vougeot that Gaston Grivot bought in 1919. So you have the castle of Clos de Vougeot on the top, and this vineyard is 1.86 hectares. And it's a very interesting vineyard because Clos de Vougeot, when you taste a Clos de Vougeot, it could be a little bit introvertized and needs more time to be drinkable. And we have a very long plot in this vineyard with 3 different kinds of terroir. And the top of our vineyard make very nice grapes, very long with tiny berries, with a huge concentration for the final cuvée. And the bottom of the vineyard, close to the main road, give nice grapes with nice juice. And always during the harvest, we blend all the grapes together to have a perfect harmony inside the cuvée. And thanks to our evolution in our winemaking style, Clos de Vougeot is more and more drinkable younger, is more and more understanding also. Of course, it's a physical cuvée, it's a masculine cuvée, but with more finesse and more delicate sensation also. In the winery, we destemmed everything during the harvest, and it's very interesting because we just separate the stem and the berries, and we put the full berries in the tanks for the alcoholic fermentation. We always have like a peaceful alcoholic fermentation because it's like the same idea when you drink a tea. You put the tea in the hot water and you wait for the good extraction of the tea in the water. You don't have to press your tea to extract a few things. And this is exactly our vision when we make wine, because we don't want to extract green sensation or sometimes dirty sensation. So that's why it's always a peaceful alcoholic fermentation. And then it's 15 months aging in barrel just before bottling. So it's very easy. We try to show you the best expression of each terroir, and it's always a good challenge to be perfectly on the balance between what the weather gives us and the expression of the terroir.
Yeah, Mathilde, one of the interesting things I always find with the range is that the villages always express themselves. So Vosne tastes like Vosne, your Nuits tastes like Nuits, the Chambol. And I'm assuming that that's because all of those cuvées are broadly treated in the same way. They're not, you're not doing massive different things to each terroir. It's trying to treat it sort of consistently with your philosophy, and then obviously, inverted commas, extract all the information from the soil through the vine into the glass.
Yes, you know, it's true that in Burgundy, it's quite the same soil, and the biggest part is the signature of each winemaker. Of course, Nuits Saint-Georges is more powerful, more with a big body, could have more tannins, and Vosne Romane, at the opposite, could be more expressive, more elegant, more feminine, close to the Chambol expression. But you know, we are very lucky to be in Vosne Romane because this is a very nice expression of Pinot Noir. And Vosne Romane terroir give to the wine a lot of elegance, a very nice structure, and a huge femininity. And with my parents and my brother, we love working with Pinot Noir because we are always looking for precision, harmony, balance, freshness, and we love to associate energy and complexity in our wines. So this is the real Grivot signature, with the delicate expression of Vosne Romane, the more powerful sensation from Nuits Saint-Georges, and like a big body of Clos de Vougeot. But you know, you explained that South Africa explored like the 90s vintage of Grivot, so you can see the evolution of the style from my grandfather, my father, and now Humbert and me. And it's true that vintage after vintage, we we improve the Grivot signature. And
Yeah, well, I
during
think that's exactly it. Your dad was, when he took over, correct me if I'm wrong, things sort of, there was the sort of the period with the Guy Akar, then he took over and then things became a bit more silky and softer, and then it's sort of now progressed to you and your brother, and it's probably getting even more so, if I can put it that way. So it's interesting.
Yes, that's true that during the 90s, my father was looking for the stability of the wines. This was he was very focused on that, with their ability to age and travel well, and that's true that the wines may have been a bit firm in their early vintages, and the new challenge was to keep the aging ability associated with more precision, silky tannins, and of course, best expression of each terroir. And I am very happy because wines now combines freshness, precision, salinity, and graffiti, and juicy yet sappy side.
Yeah.
And we love that.
Oh, so do we. And tell us what's happening in this picture.
Oh, this was a very emotional moment because so this is the Confrérie des Chevaliers du Tastevin. So the Confrérie begins in 1934, just after the economic crisis of 29, because it was very difficult for the Burgundy producers to sell their wines. And few friends, with my back grandfather, decided to, okay, we can't sell our wines, so we will invite friends and we will drink the wines together. And the number of friends increase. And so now this is La Confrérie des Chevaliers du Tastevin. And you can see my dad on my left side. Yes, exactly. So he has a red dress, like the top of the member, the very close members who organize chapitre. So La Confrérie is the promotion of all the Burgundy wines. And 2 years ago, they decided to have an evolution and to prepare the new generation in the small part with the red dress. And they decided to ask 2 women to be part of the very small team. So I am very happy and proud to be one of the 2 women to become Chevalier du Tastevin, and one day to can have a red dress.
Oh, brilliant! Well done. I think that's fantastic. Very cool.
Yes, it's quite a pressure on the shoulder because it's the promotion of all the Burgundy wines, and but it's always a fabulous time in the Clos de Vougeot during the chapitre, and it's a big party, and every people has the same love with Pinot Noir and Chardonnay.
That's awesome. Very cool.
And this is our oldest part in our cellar, built just before the French Revolution. So it's and it's very funny to see this picture because we made some renovation 2 months ago, and this is not like this now. So you will see that next December when you come.
Cool.
So yes, all the wines stay 15 months in barrel, and then we rack the wine, and the wine stay 2 more months in tanks before bottling, because we use different coopers, and it's quite to have a perfect blend of each barrel. This is during the alcoholic fermentation. Just at the beginning, we want to develop
it looks like
the top of the tank to keep a big oxygen.
Sorry, Mathilde, I think we just lost you there for 10 seconds, but it seems like it's okay again.
Oh, sorry, I think it's okay now.
No,
Good. We are very lucky because our located center of the small Vosne Romane, and all the wines in bottle, barrel, and tanks are on the same room, when we can have some old vintages aging in bottle, like this one. And this part of bottle is for the restaurants, for charities, for something like that. And it's always very interesting to, but it's quite big. If you see this picture, it's we are very lucky to have this this room.
Yeah, so there's a picture. So that was from 2015, and I don't know if Nadia's taking a picture or trying to steal a bottle, but either way, it's been caught on camera.
Yeah, I wouldn't quite trust the blonde woman in the picture there. I think she might.
Well, exactly. That's what I was just trying to see what's going on there. But that's normally where we have some wine. And I remember, Mathilde, we had it was one of the years, it wasn't 2015, but it's always quite difficult to keep the appointments on time. You know, when you've got 5 or 6 a day. And I remember clearly we were a bit late for our visit with your dad, and it was late. It was a bit dark, and he was understandably probably a bit frustrated because we were a bit late. But the end result was we started from sort of we're late. We apologize, and about 1 hour later we were in this little space, and your dad he was so relaxed, and he went to Nadia is or somewhere around there, and he pulled a bottle of 91 Richebourg, which we drank.
Wow. It's my brother's birthday. Yes, 91. This is fantastic vintage. You know, it was a Guiacad time, but all these wines have a wonderful freshness, and they are still in life. It's incredible.
Yeah, it was a very, very special experience. And so we didn't show you this yesterday, but I wanted to actually include this picture, and I did mention it to Gordy, because whenever we visit, this is one of the, for me, one of the fascinating parts in the winery, which is, Gordy, what do you make of this as another winemaker and this part of the process?
No, it was quite amazing when we came into the cellar, and there were all these thick copper wires all attached to the various tanks, which I was told was more for the settling tanks, obviously finished wines, trying to get them cleaner. And each tank was basically earthed or wired to the ground. And I was told it was to make sure that any extra static electricity on the metal would be then earthed into the ground, so that static electricity wouldn't have any effect on the settling, on the molecules. I don't know if I've got it right, Mathilde.
Yeah, you are right. Yes. It's just because inox has negative and positive sensation. So it's just to make sure that there are like a perfect balance between the energy, and to have a quiet time for the wine just before the bottling time. Because when we wrap wine from the barrel to the tank, wine stay in tanks 2 more months, and we have a small part of yeast in the bottom of the tanks. And if you don't fix the positive and the negative energy in the tanks, yeast can go up and down in the wine. And we don't want to use filtration before bottling. So that's why we try to have the perfect sedimentation of the yeast in the bottom of the tanks. And when we decided to bottle, for example, the Vosne Romane Village, we pump all the clean wine and we leave the yeast in the bottom of the tank. So this is just to make sure that no yeast or no sediment can go to the final wine in bottle. But this is like our yes, it's our crazy part in Domaine.
I love the story. It was awesome. I wanted to see if it actually works.
Gordy, you must just shoot down to the main road there and go grab some copper wire from the telephone poles there and give it a bash.
Unfortunately, copper wire is short supply in the Hemel-en-Aarde. It gets taken often, so.
No, well, Mathilde, I know we're going to carry on chatting, but I mean, I know it's been a very brief summary, but it does give a really nice picture of the domain and how it's evolved to where you are now sitting in the seat talking about Domaine Grivot. So I think what we'll do is hand over to Gordy to give us a similar sort of overview of what goes on down in the Hemel-en-Aarde Valley. And as I say, feel free to ask a question or interrupt, and then I'm sure I'll be doing the same. So Gordy, take it away.
Sure, great stuff. Yeah, it's nice to start off with a picture, which is basically our view from the winery, where we currently are. But going back, I think our story really starts in 1986 when my father became a Cape wine master and did his thesis on Pinot Noir. He'd been in the wine industry for a couple of years then, so I've been very lucky to have grown up in and amongst some very well-known winemakers throughout the industry, you know, in the 80s and going into the 90s, and being able to call on their help and advice. But with Pinot, I mean, up until then in 86, you know, Pinot was just starting. The only two that were really taking it seriously were Hamilton Russell and Bouchard. Pinot only really arrived in South Africa in the 1920s through the famous Professor Perold at Stellenbosch University. But I mean, it largely lay dormant for, you know, through the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. And only in the 70s, once the estate culture started to proliferate in South Africa, did quite a few producers out of Stellenbosch start planting Pinot. It was planted on Alto, and shortly after Murati, and Murati started producing Pinot. And then into the Hemel-en-Aarde in early 1980s with Hamilton Russell and Bouchard. And, you know, I think when my father did that thesis, I think there must have been a seed planted in his mind at the time of, this might be a nice thing to do later on. And, you know, I was just finishing university and not studying wine. I haven't studied anything formal in wine. That we bought, not this property that you're seeing now, but a little property just down the road, only about 7 hectares. Here you get a great idea of just the Hemel-en-Aarde Valley, heaven and earth valley, of its proximity to the sea. And it's one of our major, well, one of our greatest assets, I think, to grow Pinot in South Africa. I mean, in looking on a world map and lines of latitude, we are quite, you know, how could I say, quite north for the southern hemisphere. But it is the Atlantic Ocean that really keeps our temperatures temperate. We don't get as cold at night, but also we don't get as warm during the summer.
Gordy, sorry,
yes.
Gordy, just as a reminder, that because that's such an awesome picture, besides showing the proximity to the sea, which is obviously hell of important, just in front of the winery there, just remind us that vineyard that's right in front of the winery, and then that vineyard that's across the road from after the windbreak. How does it split up there?
So these are the vineyard right in front. A large vineyard there is Wind and Sea. It's one of our crew vineyards that we're making now. And then just across the road, more towards the right, almost towards that dam over there, is Sea Dragon. Okay. And these, you know, we've traveled we've had such a long and changing story with Pinot. These two vineyards are ones that have kind of shown themselves to be the greatest for us over, you know, taking 15 years and longer to get there. They were originally part of the wines that, you know, people know now, the family vineyards wines, which it takes another third vineyard. If you have Sea Dragon and then go all the way to the left, the clay kind of disappears, and then you get into a vineyard called Mrs. M. And those 3 vineyards, they're all mid-slope, and they've always been the wines that have gone into the family vineyards. There's Dean. I think Dean's watching now as well. He's our vineyard manager. This is actually Mrs. M. As you can see, the soil is very very light. It's very well drained. There's not a lot of clay in the soil. So when it was a young vineyard, it always gave quite light, but very perfumed wine. And that always brought a lot of the perfume into our family vineyards wines.
The other thing, Gordy, sorry to interrupt again, but the previous pick with Dean, I don't know if Chris go back. I remember always one of the things, I mean, it's probably obvious to all you South African winemakers, but when we speak about vineyard density, and now we've got Mathilde on the line with, I mean, vineyard density, what are you at, sort of 10,000 a hectare, Mathilde, around there?
It's 10 or 11,000.
And then Gordy, you at around 3 or 4 or 5?
3 or 4, we've got a vineyard that's got up to 6. But I mostly blame it on our equipment.
No, well, that was the thing. When I said to you, why aren't the vines a bit more densely planted? And then you told me the story about the availability of certain tractors, and that was all that was available. So that's how vineyards were planted, which is fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think South Africa as a whole, until fairly recently, has been quite, say, homogenous in their vineyard culture, and you know, we've always just used cordon training, same kind of vine densities, and it's only lately that we've really put some thought into really applying our practices to the sites and the areas that we are. And I mean, vineyard rows can be anywhere from 1.8 meters, which is actually quite narrow, to 2.5. And I blame that on the tractors. South Africans buy a lot of American tractors for a long time. So we've got big American John Deere's and Massey Ferguson. So I think that's pretty much the reason why we've got such low vine densities. But you know, they are increasing. When Peter Finnison started Bouchard Finnison, I think that was one of his main focuses. He still uses a big tractor, but then he's got alternate 5 rows that are 1 meter apart, and I think he can get up to 9,000 vines per hectare. And then we've got a vineyard right down below where we've started to look at higher densities as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Where were we?
Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah. So this is actually a picture of Sea Dragon, the soil profile in Sea Dragon. We did this a couple of years ago just to see where the roots were going, where they're getting into the clay. You know, the same thing with Wind and Sea just up the slope as well. It's got a very, very heavy clay and not quite that iron-rich color that you see there. And we didn't think they would penetrate that much into the clay. I mean, the roots still need some oxygen and to be able to get down that deep. And if it gets too thick, then it just won't go that far. So I always find Sea Dragon has just got that perfect. The roots seem to take the best from the top and the bottom. You know, from the clay you get the structure, but from the top you get a lot of finesse and perfume. Whereas you go up to Wind and Sea, and it really starts to get more muscular and a lot more savory, and sometimes a little bit rustic. There's the old man that started it all. There's my father Dave. Who did his Cape Wine Masters in '86. And the 3 of us have started to boot him out and trying to keep him busy. As soon as he comes back, we try to get some projects that keep him well busy. But on the left, Bevan, my older brother, my wife Nadia, who makes the wines with me. So Bevan handles a lot of the markets. He's got more of a general manager kind of role there. And he locks the 2 of us down at the bottom to play away. There's us in the barrel cellar. Those are, we do actually have right at the bottom of our farm, we've got some extremely stony soil. And because most of our soil is all based on granite, wherever we couldn't plant Pinot Noir or Chardonnay, we looked at varieties that have done well on granite soil. So we've got some Mediterranean varieties, some Syrah, some Grenache down at the bottom. So we've got that all in the Demi-Nuit 500-liter size, larger size barrels. And yeah, this is the cellar we built in 2005. We were previously at another cellar in where we started 1997, which was extremely small and cramped. And we sold that property to then go ahead and build this cellar, which we pulled in some fantastic architects and engineers to do it, but we asked them to do it on a budget. And it was really just trying to use gravity as best as possible within the cellar. We just like using pumps, so everything moves down to the lowest level down the barrel cellar, and then we use gas or nitrogen gas to then move the wines back up into the main cellar as well. So similar to what Mathilde says, lots of soft handling. When it gets to our fermentations, we do all our fermentations without any sulfur. Quite, believe in the notion by Jules Chauvet, the famous natural wine proponent from Beaujolais, that sulfur is toxic to the yeast strain. So we're really trying to get as many of these yeast strains, these indigenous yeast strains in our fermentations to play a part and really contribute to the complexity of the wine. There's Nadia and I on the sorting table. It's the old vibrating sorting table. We've now got a conveyor. It's a bit too noisy. But and then that's actually taken from Wind and Sea, and it's a view that you haven't quite seen, but that's almost our main view looking out into the sea from the cellar, and you get some amazing sunsets. That's kind of getting into autumn. That was actually, I think, this autumn, where you get some amazing sunsets, and you've got the Sandown Bay right in front of you. But that's actually the furthest where the sea is from us. It's actually behind that we have our closest proximity to the sea.
Oh, awesome. And Gordy, what's the sort of current family scenario with I don't want to say not expansion for the sake of expanding, but like what's the deal in the valley with good land for Pinot Noir at the moment? For someone that's not sort of totally immersed in it, would you say that it's very, very difficult to sort of like buy a small parcel of land that's got good potential for Pinot, or is there actually still some sort of availability, or how's it, what's the story?
There is definitely availability. And I mean, if you think we're still quite a young area, a young appellation. We've only been divided up into 3 smaller appellations, I think as recent as 8-9 years ago. So we're 3 appellations within the Hemel-en-Aarde, and there's still places to plant, but it's, it's obviously one of those things that you struggle with the red tape of these large tracts of land that were originally designed for, not intensive agriculture, more, grazing and sheep. And, as soon as you move up into the Overberg, it's all cereal products and, wheat and barley and sheep grazing. So I think there's still a struggle to get smaller tracts of land that you can really apply intensively. A good family-sized domain, which is for me, 20 hectares or less. Generally in South Africa, estates are quite large. The average sizes get up to 40, 50 hectares, and they get much larger than that, 100 or 200 hectares.
And then I suppose that question, if I ask Mathilde, it's probably a slightly different answer, because land is so cheap in Burgundy, Mathilde.
Oh yes, it's very cheap. I know. No, in Burgundy, it's impossible to buy a land of everything. It's impossible. Our biggest goal, actually, in Domaine Grivot is to keep the integrity of the family estate, because each part of the family is an owner of a vineyard. So our goal is to, because this is a family estate, and so you have my father, and he has 2 sisters. So there are 3 in this generation, and in my generation we are 4. So we have 2 cousins, my brother and me. And my 2 cousins live in London, so they don't have any feeling with the wine and the wine business. So it's our goal with my brother to continue to have a perfect harmony with them, and because it's important to continue all together, the four together, because with my brother, we are in the light, and thanks to them, we can continue to work. So it's important to continue this great atmosphere between each other.
Yeah, and I think
it's impossible to buy land in Burgundy.
And it's so interesting to see. It might be the same grape. It might be Pinot Noir in Burgundy and Pinot Noir in Hemel-en-Aarde, but each place has different challenges, and we've got challenges here. And then some of your challenges are maybe relating to the laws of succession, which I know is very difficult. And I don't know, Maxi, maybe you want to elaborate on that, because every time we visit, it's one of those things it seems to be a big stress with the generation that's handing over, that it's almost too expensive to do it. It needs to be thought through or done earlier. So how's it worked at your domain?
It's, I'm very lucky because I have a very nice relationship with my brother. And it's a funny story because we were very young with my brother. We were, I think he was 8 years old and I was 10 years old, and we decided to take over the family estate together. And it was not an obligation. And our parents were very, very happy at this time because they said, wow, okay, if you want to do this, okay, do it, but it's not an obligation. And that's why I continue my hobby in horse riding. My brother continue his sports also, and after general studies, I started to study viticulture and enology, but I was 18 years old. So this was more clear in my mind, but it was exactly the same objective, the same way. We are very lucky to be in Burgundy, to be in Vosne Romane, and this is a fantastic adventure to take over the family estate. And of course, it's like we have some pressure in our shoulder because it's fifth generation before us, so we have to continue the great work of the other generation and to stay on the same level and maybe go up. So it's a challenge every day, but it's a great challenge.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And Gordy, it's interesting. We always know when we've traveled together there, and as I say, the differences with the challenges are always fascinating. Even though both parties are trying to put awesome Pinot in a bottle, it's just everything's got different elements to it. So, with obviously Nadia, I don't know if she's hiding, but between the two of you guys, we know Bevan does nothing, so the two of you do all the work. But how do you split the work? Are you in the vineyard and she's in the cellar, or both of you do? How does that? I know Dean's also on the call. Dean's obviously integral of the team. How do the duties get split, I suppose?
It's not quite clearly defined, and we've been asked that question a lot. Of does she handle certain wines and I handle others? And no, it's all incestuous. We delve in each other's wines, and we there's nothing assigned to. We mix in each other's work, so there's nothing really separating us. And it's I think that we're, especially now that we've got two young kids still, that we're both interchangeable totally. I like to think, Nadia still does a lot of donkey work, but I like to think that, she only does the important decisions and I get to do all the donkey work and then present her with something that's good. But no, there's no assigned roles, and I prefer it like that. It's she thinks a lot differently sometimes, and she picks up on things that I don't. And it's always great to kind of mix those two approaches.
Oh, that's awesome. No shot, man. I think we should have Remington that's watching, Remington Norman, and I just thought it might be nice to bring him up because you obviously he's got a long history with Domaine Grivot, and I know Gordy, Nadia, and the family. You know him very well, so I thought it made sense to. I don't know if Remington is there, and you can pop him up, Christopher, just to say hello and make sure that he is actually drinking something half decent in Somerset West. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Oh, okay, got it. Hi, I can't, is the video working or not? I don't know.
We can hear you at least, but I'm sure
Okay.
you can probably find
I'd love to know from Gordy, a really important domain secret, where the hell he got his hair cut from.
I know, I've kind of like, I've tucked it away and back. As soon as I go out.
I'm glad you can't see me. We've got a DIY job here and it doesn't look too good. I just wanted to ask both of you one question, because Mathilde, you mentioned energy in wine, and I think for Pinot particularly, energy is a very important part of wine quality. Can you define and explain a little bit more about energy, how you see it and where it comes from?
It's quite difficult to explain energy, but you know, for us in Burgundy, when we have in Burgundy more and more dry summer, so we could have a better maturity than many years ago. But you have to have a perfect balance between the good maturity of the grapes and the sur maturity of the grapes, because for us, Pinot Noir needs to be vibrant, needs to be energetic, and this is due to the level of acidity. And that's why in Burgundy, it's more and more difficult to find the good time to pick the grapes, because since few years now, we have more and more dry summer. So we have the perfect maturity of the grapes, but we don't want to lose the acidity, so the freshness. And freshness means energy, and energy means vibrancy, means expression of the palate, means a long taste when you try the wine, and means you know, where you are frozen like this, you have some whoa, and Pinot Noir needs to be vibrant like this. When you try wine, freshness is wow, okay, so this is like a story in your body. And energy is maybe this explanation.
Thank you. Yeah, Gordy, come on. Energy.
Energy. I think it's very crucial to us. And I've as a wine lover, I've always been a bit of an acid head. I love wines with good acidity and that kind of really pick you up. And I think it's quite crucial, especially where we are here in the Hemel-en-Aarde, to pick the grapes properly, because I think that's very crucial to the energy expression that you're going to get in them. You know, 1 or 2 days too late and it's too warm, you know, the wine just totally dies and the fruit dies and you'll never get it back. But you know, I've also learned that you can't pick too early either. Otherwise, the grape is not going to give it, you know, anything to you as well. You'll have an insipid wine. So, you know, for us, especially in those warmer years where you need to be on your toes and picking the grapes at exactly the right moment, I think is very crucial to getting energy, something, you know, that immediately hits you and wakes up your senses. And, you know, rather than just, you know, throwing a whole lot of richness at you, you know, I think energy must be uplifting and make the wine drinkable.
Mm. It's interesting because I think, I don't know whether you agree, but it seems to me an awful lot of people confuse it with impact, and it's not. See, it's nothing to do with impact. It's to do with freshness. It's to do with, it's a core of the wine. And the other thing I just wanted to ask both of you, because I know you've said things about this, vine age. I know, Mathilde, you've got some very old vines going back to the 30s in Bordeaux, I think. And Gordy, you've got some nicely mature vines now. Do you have a feeling and a take on the impact of vine age on wine quality?
Mathilde?
Probably yes. You know, that's why it's very important to perfectly know each terroir, each appellations, because in Burgundy at Domaine Grivot we need 8 days to pick all the grapes for the 15 hectares. So it's, you are true, Gordon. When it's time, it's time. You have to pick the grapes. But we have cold terroir, we have warm terroir. So depending on the exposition of the vines, that's true that depending on the age, we can pick earlier or later. But you speak about the Bordeaux, and Bordeaux is a very old vineyard at the domain. On average, it's 95 years old. and we don't pick this vineyard earlier because it's old vines and it needs more time to have the perfect maturity of the grapes comparing to young vines. So it depends.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's very interesting take on that. And as far as age on wine quality, on the quality level, do you find that the older vines produce automatically better quality given reasonable yields?
It's true that the yield is very important, and I'm sure that with old vines you have more complexity. But it will be interesting because when we speak about the Bordeaux, we replant 50% of the vineyard, and 2020 will be the first vintage with the new vine. And we don't know yet, but depending the quality of the grapes, we will see if we add the grapes to the final cuvée of Bordeaux, or if we put the young grapes into the Bourgogne cuvée, the generic cuvée. But you know, that's why we, in our vineyard, we replant when a feet dead, we replant a new one, because we trust on the balance between young vines and old vines, because old means complexity, and so old complexity, and young means more energy, juicy sensation. So the harmony is very interesting when you blend all together, young and old.
Thanks.
Gordy?
No, for myself, I think vine age is incredibly important, and I've spent most of my career making wines from very young vines, and you know, this project that we have here, our Newton Johnson vineyards, where we've got Sea Dragon, Wind and Sea, that I think are approaching 17 or 18 years now. We've seen the progression. We've seen how the vines have changed. You know, firstly, I think the vines really first have to adapt to their environment. I mean, we're not Burgundy. We've got quite acidic soils, and you almost feel the vine just trying to find its groove into where it's being planted. And you know, when it's younger than 10 years old, you've got these teenager vines that are kind of gawky and produce big long shoots and big bunches, but they do have some energy in themselves. They're a lot more simple, but they've got very vibrant fruits, good acidity, can have some strong tannin. But we saw from 13, 14, 15 years old that already there were some changes coming in. The vigor of the vine just starts to pull back a little bit, and it starts to put a bit more into the grapes. And we thought that had a direct translation into old wines that can age a little bit older. From 2015, we really just saw our wines having a lot of depth. We felt that we could now go over into not doing any filtration with them as well. And yeah, they're just gaining more layers, and it's wonderful to see the change, because it's my first experience, seeing these vines get that older, and it's our job to make sure that they get old. So keeping leaf roll virus out of the vineyards is very important. But yeah, I don't think that we've seen the proper potential of Pinot, especially in the Hemel-en-Aarde, without being able to get much older vines. Yeah. And I'll be a lot grayer and perhaps a lot less hair, and hopefully I can taste that in the future.
Yeah. Just wanted to add one other thing. Somebody mentioned the cost of land in Burgundy. Gordy, if you're thinking of expanding into Burgundy, prices are between 20 and 30 million euros a hectare at the moment.
No, I don't think I'll ever get there.
No,
You're welcome to come look here.
Remington, it's great to have you do a little cameo. We always appreciate it, and and nice to get some extra insights from the two of them. So thanks for joining us, and I hope that you managed to get a flight out of here at some stage.
So do I. Cheers.
Cheers, Remington.
Thanks, Remington.
Thank you. Bye.
Mathilde, there are a few questions coming in, so I think we're probably going to give it 5 more minutes, even though we're slightly over the hour, just because I see a few questions coming in. So maybe we'll try and do the last few questions quite quickly. But I just wanted to, because there's quite a lot of friends and customers that are listening, that are on the Grivot allocation lists. And so it'll just be quite interesting, maybe just to give a quick summary of the 17 vintage, which we're going to be getting shortly. And then maybe just to follow that up with 18, just as a broad overview of the 2 vintages and how it went for you.
So 17 is Burgundy. It's a very charming and elegant vintage. I'm in love with this vintage. It's very elegant, it's very drinkable, and it's a perfect vintage between 16 and 18, because 16 is very complex, powerful, and maybe needs few years aging in bottle. And 17 is very glamour. It's like a caress. It's very charming and elegant. The last few months, we opened few bottles of 17, and we had some village appellations, Premier Cru, some Clos de Vougeot also, and it was fresh. It's a generous vintage with a huge freshness, very charming. And 18 is more, it's a warm vintage, more complex, more rich. But thanks to our signature, we don't lose the freshness and we don't lose the energy. All the people came to the winery, tried this vintage, were very surprised about the freshness we keep in this vintage. And I have today a Clos de Vougeot 18, so it's a baby, it's true, but it's a beautiful wine, very elegant, and sophisticated at the same time. And the Clos de Vougeot could be introvertized, but thanks to this kind of vintage, very warm, it gives to the cuvée more education, more drinkability, even if it's too young.
Awesome. No, that's fantastic. And actually on the flip side, Gordy, I was going to say it's the same sort of for you, 17, 18, but maybe is it to maybe mention 18 and 19 as sort of for you, or yeah, you far away.
Yeah, 18 and 19 are actually quite similar in a way. We haven't bottled our 19s just yet, but I see some people tonight who are drinking 17s. Where 17 for us was a very generous vintage. It's got a lovely concentration, still a very supple tannin structure. Especially for where we are on the upper Hemel-en-Aarde, where we get a very fine tannin structure. It's very generous. And then the 18s, which are mostly out now, much cooler vintage. Especially after all the years of droughts that we had, 15, 16, 17, 18 was kind of a little bit back to what we were used to, the normal picking dates, but still quite low cropping. So I think there'll still be some good concentration there, but low cropping. You can see the vines had a bit of a hangover from the drought that they've had over the previous few years. And then going into 19, I think, still a little bit of that. 18, 19 to me are very similar in that sense.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Try and squeeze in the last few minutes here. So Mathilde, there was a question about Selection Massal, and if I'm not mistaken, it was sort of around the 80s or early 90s. There was a bit of experimentation with sort of clonal selection at the Domaine. Let's say from that experimentation to where we are now, what is sort of the philosophy on that front versus clonal versus Selection Massal?
It was a big reflection when we decided to replant the vineyard of Boudot, because Selection Massal is awesome, but our Boudot old vines is very, very old, and it was too complicated to have a perfect result with the Sélection Massal. So we decided to use only clone, but several different clones to have at the same time, because in Burgundy, we are a big team of winemakers and doing some tests about Sélection Massal. And it's true that the result is very interesting because grapes are very beautiful, but when you have a look on the edge of the vines, it's a vines who are five years old, but with grapes from a vine from maybe 45 years old. So it's not a good result for us, because when we replant a vineyard, we want to keep this vineyard for a long time. So we prefer to have generous grapes when it's young, and then year after year, grapes start to be more long, more separate with small berries, rather than vines with 5 years old and perfect grapes at this time, because I think after 25 or 30 years, we will have not a good production in this vine. So we decided to use only clone.
Okay. No, well, thanks. That gives Dean his answer, who works with Gordy and Nadia. So, and then let's do the last question before we finish off. Mimi, hello, all the way from Cape Town. She was just asking when, and I know Remington's touched on the answer there, or his view, was in terms of the 05 and the 08 vintage at the sort of, let's say, at the Premier Cru level at the Domaine, when would you as a family be looking to drink those, or in which sort of period would you look to start drinking them, those two vintages?
We had some 05, it was maybe a Premier Cru. It was Les Chaumes, yes, it was Vosne Romane Premier Cru Les Chaumes 05 we had for last Christmas. Really interesting, ready to drink. It's not exactly the same things for the Grand Cru, for example, for the Clos de Vougeot. Échezeaux is more ready because it's a delicate appellation, more sophisticated, so it's more ready to drink. And this is very interesting to ask about the 08 vintage, because my dad did a great job in this vintage, because it was not an easy vintage in Burgundy. And at the same time, it's a real Pinot Noir vintage, very delicate with a very nice sophistication. And we don't have too much 08 in the winery, but maybe the last bottle we drank, it was 2 years ago, and it was famous, very fresh and very delicate at the same time. I like this vintage.
Oh, awesome. It's a great answer, and I'm sure, Mimi, that basically gives you carte blanche to open an 05 and an 08 tonight, by the way, after that answer. I don't know if the two of you have followed the stream on the side, but it's really cool to see everyone drinking Newton Johnson, Sea Dragons, and Wind and Sea, and various cuvées from the Domaine. So it's, yeah, just great to see. Good energy on the chat, very good energy. So, but no, just to end off with, I just wanted to say a big thanks to both of you, and just great to spend some time with you and go through. I know it's a sort of a very short period of time, just over an hour, but I think it's, I certainly enjoy it, and I think it adds a lot of value to all the friends and customers who tune in and listen. So we appreciate the time, and Mathilde, we'll see you in Vosne Romane, hopefully before the end of the year, I hope. And then Gordy, we'll definitely see you and Nadia and Bevan and the team shortly. So I really appreciate it. And thanks to you guys.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, have a good evening. Thanks again.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.